So today we are talking about how to get toned and lose weight. So I know a lot of people are interested in this. We've already kind of talked about this in class, but we're going to just re-go over everything and go into it in a little bit more detail. So make sure you take notes and ask some questions and we will get started. So first thing we need to think about when we are trying to get toned or lose weight is this concept of body fat percentage versus BMI. So body fat is actually healthy for us and you need a certain amount. And if we kind of learned this in class, here's a picture of healthy body fats percentages here. As we see for men on the left side of your screen, the healthy range is 8 to 19%. And then for women, the healthy range is 21 to 33%. So you do need a certain amount of body fat to be healthy. Now, if you're doing like a figure competition or something like that, bodybuilding competition, you might dip below the healthy range, but for the most part you want to stay within that healthy range. And everybody's different genetically, so these aren't, you can be slightly out of this range and still be healthy, but this is kind of a general guideline. Okay, so back to this. So when we're looking at body fat percentage, the way we get that number is we're measuring fat mass. There's a bunch of different ways to measure that. You can do the bod pod, the hydrostatic, skin fold calipers. Unfortunately, Boise State's lab is closed, so you can't measure that right now unless you have your own calipers or a scale that does it. Scales are not the best, but they work. So what it's measuring is fat mass over total mass. And total mass is going to be fat mass plus lean mass. And again, we need both. So don't be thinking that fat mass is bad because you do need it. And what this gives you is a body fat percentage. So a lot of times people confuse this with BMI. BMI is only your weight over your height, and that's not the best way to measure whether you're healthy or not, because some people have lots of muscle mass. Muscle mass tends to be heavy, so sometimes if you have a lot of muscle mass up here, which is going to give you an overall heavy weight, versus your height, it's going to make your BMI look overweight or obese. So just be aware of that. Body fat percentage is really what we're trying to do here when we're trying to tone up and lose some weight. Okay. On top of that, we need to talk about body image real quick, because this can go downhill sometimes if people are hyper-focused on losing as much weight as possible. That can go down a bad road, or if they're working out too often, you can work out too much, you can try to lose too much weight. You need to make sure you're eating enough. So, do I have that? Let's talk about that right now, I guess. So when we're thinking about losing weight, actually I have it over here. We got a new sheet. Okay. So how to decrease fat mass. That's what we're going to talk about first. And again, fat mass is important. So don't be thinking that, you need to have 0% fat, because that would be very unhealthy. So when we're trying to think about nutrition and calories, we have our basal metabolic rate. There's plenty of calculators online that you can use to calculate this. And this, for most people, is somewhere between 1,200 to 2,000 calories. So this is just kind of what it takes your body to stay alive. On top of this, you wake up in the morning and you probably burn another 300 to 400 calories just walking around, living your life, doing daily things. So this is just daily. And then if you add exercise on top of that, depending on your exercise, let's say you went for a 3-mile walk, that's going to be another 300 calories there. So if we add up this small block down here, most people are going to be burning, that's about 1,800 calories. So if you're burning 1,800 calories and you eat 1,800 calories, there is 0 net change. So you should maintain the same weight overall. If you're trying to lose a little bit of weight, let's say you are burning 1,800 calories and let's say you're burning 1,800, or let's say you're burning 2,000 calories and you eat 800 calories, this means you're going to be negative 200 calories. And so theoretically, you're going to lose some weight if you're doing that. Although it does get more complex than this. But generally, when you're thinking about caloric balance, it is healthy to lose between 1 and 2 pounds of fat per week. If you lose fat more quickly than that, it becomes unsustainable and unhealthy sometimes because you're not eating enough food. And what this turns out is a 500 caloric deficit. So let's say you exercise for 2,000 calories, you eat 1,500 calories. That is going to be negative 500, which theoretically will lead to 1 pound of fat loss per week. And that's what I would recommend. You don't need to decrease it by 500. There are other ways to increase your metabolism. One is obviously exercise. 2, if you eat a lot of protein, that can increase the calories you use as well. So that's kind of the formula, and you want to do this nice and slow. So the rule of thumb is to never eat below your basal metabolic rate. So if you forgot what that number is, go on Google, search basal metabolic rate, and find what yours is, and then try and eat at least that many calories. I typically recommend to even eat the daily value right there. So it's going to be like 1,500 for somebody who's lower, maybe 2,400 for somebody with a lot of muscle mass. And yeah, and then I would use your exercise as your weight loss calories. So that's what I would do. Okay, is it true that refined carbs prevent fat from burning? Not necessarily. So when we're talking about refined carbs, these are simple sugars, and simple sugar is going to cause your blood sugar to spike. So let's call this blood sugar. So blood sugar, when it spikes, causes your insulin to spike. And insulin has got a lot of flack lately because people say insulin is storing fat. Well, that's only partially true. Insulin allows your cell to actually open up and for blood sugar to get out of your bloodstream, because you get blood sugar going through your bloodstream, which is not healthy. We want it out of our bloodstream. Insulin opens your cell up to get that sugar inside the cell where it can actually be used. So we need insulin. If you don't have insulin, you have type 1 or 2 diabetes, well, type 1 diabetes, and it's not a great time. So you do need insulin. So when people say that refined sugars prevent fat from burning, what happens is when you eat that sugar, your blood sugar spikes. When your blood sugar spikes, your body is using this blood sugar and it's not relying as much on these extra fat cells. So when you're not eating, like when you're sleeping or when you're fasting, you're burning a higher rate of fat because you don't have blood sugar in your system. So if you don't use all these calories, some of this excess sugar can be stored as fat as well. So that's going to happen naturally, but for exercising, we should be fine. And if we're not overeating, we should be fine. And we should be eating somewhat of a low sugar diet anyways. So, good question. All right. Should you avoid sugar if you want to lose belly fat? I would avoid refined sugars, but don't avoid carbs because vegetables are carbs, fruits are carbs, all that stuff. So when you're thinking about belly fat, you'll see ads on the side of websites that say, lose belly fat fast, right? Or whatever. You can't spot reduce belly fat. So if you store fat on your belly, that's because of genetics. That's not because of, your fat's just stored there. So the way it works is, let's draw another picture here. Let's draw a little guy, and let's say he's got a belly. This will be a little funny drawing. All right, and let's say this guy stores, let's try some other colors here. This guy stores most of his fat on his belly, right? And men tend to store more fat on their belly than women do, although everybody is genetically different. Let's say he stores a little bit of fat down here, but his legs are pretty lean. When he starts to lose weight, he's going to lose weight from all these spots at the same time. So he's going to lose some leg fat, he's going to lose some belly fat, and he's going to lose some of the back fat there. But because he has more here, this is going to go down more, right? But it's all the same percentage. So if he loses 1% body fat, he lost 1% from here. He lost 1% from here. Oh, I can't draw. There we go, 1%. He lost 1% from there. So that's kind of how that works. So you can't reduce just belly fat. You're losing fat overall. And people are going to always have some belly fat. So don't worry too much about that. All right, next question. If I'm trying to burn fat without losing muscle mass, what food groups should I avoid or eat more of? Do I need to be in a caloric deficit? Good question. So, if you want to burn fat without losing muscle mass, what I recommend is eating the same amount of calories like we see right here. So I've put a few friends on a schedule like this where they eat the exact same amount of calories that they're burning, but because they're exercising and because they're losing weight, some of these calories are going to build muscle mass And so they're actually at a caloric deficit because they're building muscle mass and they're using calories to build muscle, and their fat is going down because of that. So you can maintain muscle mass if you are at a caloric deficit too, though. So if you do need to lose a little fat mass, and if you eat something like this, negative 200 calories, you should be able to maintain your fat mass if you're lifting, as long as you are lifting and then eating your adequate protein. So you want essential amino acids, which are meat products, dairy products, anything with all 9 essential amino acids. So yes, if you try to lose fat too quickly, though, I have seen that muscle mass tends to drop as well. Anytime you're losing overall weight, muscles do tend to shrink a little bit. So, but you can maintain if you're lifting. So, good questions. Are there certain foods that you can still make you not lose weight even though you are under a caloric amount? Not necessarily. If you're eating late at night, you might store more because your body's not responding to this blood sugar, but that's I don't know. Not necessarily. So there are hormone factors involved, and food does sometimes affect hormones, and you do have gut bacteria involved. And so refined foods, like those simple sugars and stuff, they're not going to be perfect for your gut bacteria. Your gut bacteria like to get fiber and starches, so fruits and vegetables and plants. So that's definitely going to help you at least maintain a healthy gut bacteria, and they have correlated some healthier gut bacteria with an ability to keep excess weight off, unwanted weight. So good. Say you just eat 2 pieces of cake that whole day, but are still 500 calories below the amount. So technically you could lose weight. It wouldn't be the most healthy for you, but yeah, you can lose weight eating ice cream, but you're not going to be building muscle like you want to because you're not going to have all your essential amino acids. And so there's lots of problems with that. Next question. What are some carbs we should avoid when trying to lose weight? I would say just like sugary drinks. You don't want to avoid all carbs because you still got to enjoy your life. So, you can still have some ice cream, but anytime you're consuming a high sugar dose without many nutrients involved, then it's not going to be ideal. So when you are consuming sugar, think about having extra nutrients with that meal. Watermelon, for example. There's sugar in watermelon, but there's lots of good vitamins and minerals and nutrients in there. With salads as well, like lettuce is a carb, but there's lots of good fiber in there and all kinds of other things. So think about when you are going to eat carbs, like whole wheat bread over white bread, that's a good option. Potatoes are good options because they got good fiber, good potassium. So when you are eating a carb or sugar or whatever, you just want to have extra nutrients with it. I have heard that you do not need ab workouts to get abs. You just need to be in a caloric deficit for a while. I kind of disagree with that, but it's also kind of true. Give me a second, and if I forget to answer that question, ask me again. What are some good ways to track your calorie intake? So it's kind of hard to track your calorie intake, actually. That website that we used, I forget what it was called, in class. It's a free calorie tracker. I know MyFitnessPal is out there. I'm really blanking on the one that we used that was free and it was really good. If somebody remembers, let me know in the chat what one that was we used in class. But you can get close. You can estimate, but it's very hard to figure out exactly what you're doing unless you're weighing all your food, and I think that is ridiculous. So I don't think that's necessary. How does one with a fast metabolism adjust their caloric intake and burning of calories compared to someone who doesn't have a fast metabolism? Well, if you have a fast metabolism, you just need to eat more, right? Unless you need to lose some weight, then in that case, it's going to benefit you. And actually, I'll talk about it real briefly down here. Resistance training or building muscles is actually going to help you burn more calories and increase your metabolic rate. So, or your metabolism, however you want to talk about it. So if you build muscle, you're actually going to burn more calories per day. 1 pound of muscle is equal to somewhere between 30 and 50 calories per day, which is pretty significant. If you actually add that up, let's say you put 10 pounds on over a year, that's going to equal, let's say on average, 400 calories extra per day, and that is almost 1 pound of fat per week. So building muscle mass is actually kind of like a secret weapon for losing fat mass. So Chronometer, yeah, that was the app we used in class. You can use that one. It's free and it's fairly intense. There are some issues with it, but I really like it for the free aspect. Okay, I'm going to talk about some. Well, let's answer a few more. So I heard that diet sodas are actually worse for you if you are trying to lose weight. Wouldn't they be okay to have? I have heard that too, and I did some research on it, but I can't remember what I found. I do know that fake sugars are not always the healthiest thing for you, but I think sometimes their dangers have been blown out of proportion. So if you are diabetic, then I highly recommend drinking diet sodas. If you are not diabetic, I recommend avoiding diet sodas. But technically they're not calories, but that just seems weird to me that you're consuming something that doesn't turn into calories. So I don't have a definite answer on that one. All right, and then one more. In order to lose a pound a week, I realize that you need to be at a deficit. Yep. What does it mean if you are meeting that goal but losing weight significantly quicker? So that could be a few things. One, you could be counting your calories wrong. Two, you could be burning more than you think you're burning because it's actually hard to calculate exactly how many calories. So you might be more active than you think you are. And so what I would do if you're a little bit worried about that, and I mean, you can still lose up to 2 pounds of fat per week, but when I've seen people do this in the lab, it seems like they lose some muscle mass along with that. So if you're concerned about losing fat too quickly, I would just try and increase your calories by like 100 a week and just slowly build up and see if you can find a level playing field there. So good questions. Okay, and I know who asked this. So if you got a lot of muscle mass, that means your caloric intake is going to be even higher, and if you're lifting, you're going to be burning a lot. So sometimes you just really got to increase the food you eat. For instance, when I put on, like over the last 2 years, I probably put on 10 to 15 pounds of muscle, and I found that I was losing lots of weight because now that I had extra muscle, like down here, I was burning significantly more calories, right? I was burning about 400 more calories just because I put on 10 pounds of muscle, and so I had to adjust my lifestyle to eat more so I didn't get too skinny. So great questions. All right, let's look at cardio exercises for losing weight. I'm going to grab a new sheet here since we kind of went a little bit overboard there. All right, so we've all heard about the fat burning zone probably. Fat burning zone. And I think there is a case to be made for this, but I think it's overhyped and overrated, so I don't really like it. Let's add some color here. So I'm going to explain right now. So when we're talking about the fat burning zone, what happens is when you are doing low intensity exercise, you are burning a high percentage of fat mass because fat takes oxygen to use as fuel, and it takes some time for oxygen to break down and utilize fat so that you can use it as fuel. So like let's say you're sleeping, all right? Now you're not moving a whole lot, so you're not burning a whole lot of calories when you're sleeping, but you're burning like 99% fat, almost 100, and then like 1% carb when you're sleeping. Now you wake up from that sleep, you stand up. When you stand up, your fat utilization is going to drop to like 90%, and your carb utilization is going to increase to like 10%, let's say. Now, let's say you start running, right? You're late for class, so you're running to class. Now your fat percentage is like maybe 50%, and your carb percentage that you're using is 50%. All right, now you realize that you're really going to be late, so now you're sprinting as hard as you can go. Now you're using like 1% fat and 99% carb. So carbs are our quickest and cheapest way of energy. Fat, it takes you some breathing and takes you oxygen in order to produce that. However, these are just percentages, and so people think, oh, I should go for like an easy walk, right? So walking is going to be burning like 80% fat, 20% carbs. So then people draw that conclusion, oh, I should be doing low intensity activity, right? Down here, down here. this isn't quite the case because there are more factors to take in consideration. For instance, when you're sleeping, you're not burning very many calories. When you're standing, you're not burning very many calories. When you are running, you're burning a lot. When you're sprinting, you're burning a lot. And when you're walking, you're burning like so-so, right? So when you're actually exercising at a higher intensity, you're burning way more calories. And as a result of that, you actually end up burning more calories of fat, even if it's a lower percentage. So let's say you go for a run or a walk. Let's compare both of these. So 1 mile equals about 100 calories. It depends on how much you weigh, but let's just use that for now. Draw a line here. So 1 mile run equals 100 calories. When you're walking, this is going to take you about 20 minutes. Running is going to take you, let's say, 10 minutes. And you're burning 100 calories in each. When you're walking, you're going to burn, if it's 80-20, I guess you'll burn 80 calories in fat. And 20 in carbs. And then when you're running, you're going to burn, in 10 minutes, you're going to burn 50 calories of fat and 50 calories of carbs. However, it doesn't always work perfectly like this. I mean, this example works, but what actually happens on the graph when you measure this in the lab is that your fat burning capacity builds up to about here. And actually, so this is intensity. So as you do more intense, and this is in calories, right? So this is calories of fat. And so when you're doing this run, you can run for 20 minutes, and over that 20 minutes, you're going to burn 200 calories, right? Whereas if you walk for 20 minutes, you're only going to burn 100 calories, right? If you're doing a mile versus 2 miles. So you can burn a lot more, a lot quicker. And on top of that, these 50 calories of carbs actually need to be replaced later on. So after your workout, when you eat a little snack, you're actually going to be replenishing your carbs, and they're not going to be stored as fat. So you really want to think about intensity, because when you're doing intensity, you're actually burning more fat overall, or you're burning a higher calorie amount of fat, and you can burn it more quicker. And one more thing on top of that is, as you increase your fitness with, like, let's say HIIT training, for example, so high intensity interval training, you are actually training your body to burn fat more efficiently. So then in the future, you're going to burn more fat over the long run and save some of these carbs. So if you were here and then let's say you get more fit, but you still run a 10-minute mile, now that it's easier for you, you're going to burn maybe 70 carbs of fat, or calories of fat, and maybe 30 calories of carbs. All right, so I see a lot of questions in the chat, so I'm going to go to that real quick here. Okay, where are we at? Oh, we've only had one more, but that's good. With that being said, would a low intensity HIIT workout be less beneficial than a high intensity one, or because HIIT training workout is seen differently than a walk or a run? Yeah, so I'm gonna break it down here for us. So actually, let me create one HIIT workout for you guys just to catch everybody up. So a HIIT workout, let's make an example one, and then we're gonna lay that out in the week. So HIIT workouts, in my opinion, you should be doing 2 per week. 2 per week. And what you're doing is you're spiking your heart rate up and bringing it back down. So you always want to do a warm-up. Whatever you want to do, just get a light sweat. And then the beginner one that I like is just 30 seconds hard, 30 seconds easy. That times 6. Hard, easy. And you want to really spike that heart rate up, because there's going to be a lot more benefits than just losing the weight. So you're getting health benefits, you are improving your cardiovascular system, which means you're going to burn fat more easily, and then you can recover. You can even say for a minute here, and you can make a bunch of different ones. You can say 10 by 1 minute hard with 2 minutes easy. You can say 7 by 2 minutes hard, 1 minute easy. So, and you can play around with the intensities, right? This one, since you're going longer, you could be 7 out of 10. This one could be an 8 out of 10. This one could be a 9 out of 10. So the shorter your time, the more intense you want to go. Okay, so I saw some more questions. Do you suggest doing carb and strength training on the same day, or should they be different days? Any tips for beginners and HIIT? So give me a second on the strength and HIIT training. Re-ask it if I forget. Any tips for beginners and HIIT? Yeah, I would say just do something like this. Start out easy. You don't need to start at a 9 out of 10. Start at a 7 out of 10. And a good way to measure that with your breathing, I have this chart right here, is check this out and try to get your intensity above a 7. So this means that if we look at your speech, you can only say a few words, and you're breathing pretty heavy, right? Only broken sentences maybe you can speak. So that's a good way to monitor how hard you're working. Although 7 out of 10, most people are able to do that pretty well. Oh, all right. Good question before we move on to the weekly schedule. Does our muscle type makeup, fast versus slow twitch, affect our fat burning capabilities? So people do have fast versus slow twitch muscle fibers. We call these type 1 and these type 2. Type 2 muscle fibers like to increase in size. Type 2 muscle fibers have lots of mitochondria, and they like to decrease in size to become more efficient. So the smaller your muscle is, the more efficient it is for oxygen. Oh, sorry about that. The more efficient it is for oxygen to be utilized. So slow twitch muscle fibers are going to make burning fat more easy for some people, particularly if they're well trained. Fast twitch, though, those muscles are going to become larger, which then will help you look maybe more toned. So there is some pros and cons to each, but yes, slow twitch do have a higher fat burning capability. So there is genetics involved. Some people naturally have more muscle mass. Some people naturally carry more fat mass. So again, you can't always meet every picture that you see in the media or whatever. Some are unrealistic for some people, right? So you gotta work with what you got. Okay, let's look at this weekly schedule here and how I would implement HIIT training with just average training for weight loss. So the recommendations, again, for staying healthy in general are 150 minutes of cardio per week. So we can break that down into 5 days of 30 minutes, or you can break that down however you want, and 2 days of resistance training or strength training, some people call it. So if I'm going to lay out my cardio, you don't need to do HIIT training every single day. In fact, that might be too often. So what I would do is, I like taking Mondays off, mostly because I work a lot on Mondays. So let's start on Tuesday. Let's say Tuesday you're not feeling it, so you just go for an easy walk, right? 30 minutes, that is completely fine. Wednesday, let's say you're ready for your HIIT workout. So who knows, maybe you want to go do hill sprints, so you could run up a hill for 30 seconds, then walk back down, so 30 seconds hard, and then down for 30 seconds or however long it takes, and you do that 6 times. So that could be your hill workout. Make sure you do a little bit of warm-up before you do that. The next day, you could be off. The next day, we could maybe go for a hike with some friends, right? Maybe an hour hike with some friends. Then Saturday, maybe you're ready for another HIIT workout. So this time you want to, and you don't need to make it always definite. Let's say you're not feeling like making a real strict routine. You just go out into the foothills and you just start walking for your warm-up. Then eventually you feel like jogging, so you run for a little bit. Then your breath kind of gets away from you, so you walk again. Then you decide, okay, I'm going to run up this hill, so then you run again, then you walk. So you can make this real organic where you're just kind of going by feel as well. We had a question about resistance training on your workout days. Yes, if I was training athletes particularly, I would do this. The reason I would do that kind of thing, let's actually, I'll get another sheet here, is because if you're really trying to peak your performance, what happens when you're training is that you're developing inflammation, and you're actually getting better during the recovery process. So here we have time, and here we have inflammation. And inflammation is a good thing to a certain extent. Too much of it can be a bad thing, but inflammation is a marker for recovery, and that's kind of what signals your body to move in and repair. So we do want some inflammation. And so let's say you do a workout right here. So here's your workout, ground zero. You're going to have inflammation slowly building. Let's draw some time frames here. So this is 24 hours, 48, 72. You're going to have inflammation building up for about 24 hours, and then it's going to peak there. If you've noticed after a workout, you get sore about 24 hours later. That's because your inflammation is peaking at that point. And then when you recover, you start to go back down. And so with really well-trained people, they tend to be able to be fully recovered in about 48 hours. As you get older, what's going to happen is your peak of soreness gets out. So pretty soon you'll start getting sore around, 36 hours, and then it'll take you maybe 72 hours till you're back. So what I like to do when I go back to this chart, particularly if I'm training really hard, right, is I only want to spike my inflammation twice a week, probably. I mean, maybe 3 times if you're really young and really fit, but in my opinion, 2 is enough. So let's say this is our inflammation levels right here. We're off on Sunday, so we're going down. We do an easy run, which isn't much. We hit this hard workout here. Let's say we did resistance training here as well. So we kind of hit a more intense day. Your inflammation is going to spike over Thursday, and then it's going to start dropping back down here. The hour hike wasn't very rough on you. Then you hit Saturday, another hard workout. So then you're going to go back up, and then you're going to go back down into Monday. So that's kind of why you want to structure some hard days with some rest in between. And so if you don't want to work hard on your resistance days, and if you're not training super hard, or really trying to get as much intensity as possible, you can do some resistance over here. This is just if you're really trying to train athletes and get as much out of them as possible. So that's kind of how I would lay that out. All right, let's get to some questions here. We're good. All right, re-ask your question if I didn't answer it. So that's how I would do that. Let's talk about how to build muscle real quick. So when you're building muscle, if you're a beginner, you are in luck. Beginner. So when you're starting out on your workout journey, I guess you could call it, and you haven't been working out, you don't have to do very much to get really good gains, and particularly your strength is going to go up. So I'm going to show you guys this real quick here. So what you see here on this chart is how muscle mass and how you adapt to strength training. And if you see hypertrophy on that chart, hypertrophy is when you are increasing muscle size. And this is kind of what you want to do to tone. So you do need to lose some body fat to tone, but you also need to increase muscle mass to tone. And so if you notice, hypertrophy doesn't begin right away. So if you are beginning and you just want to start toning up or something, you don't need to go very hard at all, because a lot of it's just going to be adding extra soreness that you don't need. So right away, keep it nice and easy. You're just creating that, if you see that neural adaptation, this is your body's response and ability to fire your muscles. And that's really what's increasing, is your electrical stimulus that's able to fire the muscles. And then as you keep developing that, that's when you tend to see hypertrophy beginning. So for beginners, especially since we're on quarantine right now, you can do a basic workout like this. Lunges, let's say 3 by 10 lunges each side. You can do some push-ups, again 3 by 10, or you can go up to 20, right? Some people do that 100 challenge, where it's like push-ups, sit-ups, squats, I believe. I would add a few more, but that'll work for some people. That's quite intense if you're just beginning, so I wouldn't recommend that. What I like to do when I'm creating strength workouts is I just bring up this chart. We already created this in class. This is just my cheat sheet. So I just go through this. I have legs down here. I got push-ups, so I'm doing my pec exercises. One of the things you want to do is start lifts and start your workouts with larger muscle mass, because it's going to be more difficult to lift with those muscles. And so if you're waiting to the end of your workout to do those, you're going to have a lot harder time, and you're not going to be able to get as much out of your workout. So we want to stay balanced. So you want to do some type of back exercise. Pull-ups are really good. although a lot of people don't have pull-up bars in their house. So, even if you can only do 3 of them, still really solid there. Lots of people, when they're thinking about getting toned, they think about doing their abs a lot. And abs are great, but they're not a very useful muscle. They do look really good, so I wouldn't avoid them completely. But one of the things to think about when you're doing these other exercises is keeping a tight, strong core, because you're going to be activating all kinds of core muscles when you're doing lunges, when you're doing push-ups, even when you're doing pull-ups, because your core is anything between your shoulders and your knees. So abs, they make nice, they look nice, so you can go ahead and do them. You could even add some obliques to those, like windshield wipers, where you're laying on your back and rolling your legs down to either side. That can be good for your oblique muscles. That's your side abs, kind of. When you're doing abs, you want to make sure you balance yourself out as well with some lower back exercises. So we could do Supermans there. And again, 3x10 would work. Even 2x10, whatever you got to do, just in the beginning, just start doing something, right? And then you can end with calf raises or whatever you want. So when you're trying to get toned, a lot of people just think, kind of like that question said, can I just lose weight and get abs? Potentially. But if your abs aren't large enough because you haven't been exercising them, or your other muscles aren't large enough because you haven't been exercising them, just losing fat isn't necessarily going to make you look better. It might make you look a little better, but there is such a thing as having too little fat, and that doesn't look real great. And if you have some amount of fat mass but no muscle mass underneath to make it look good, we call this, I guess it's not the greatest term, but skinny fat, right? So somebody who is skinny, but they don't have any muscle. So they might not look great because they're lacking that muscle mass. So muscle mass is just good for you overall in general, and you just want to have it. So let's focus on getting that muscle mass up there. All right, let's get rid of this. So let's say you're not a beginner and you want to think about how can you increase your muscle mass further. So this is what we call hypertrophy training. And you don't need to follow this completely to a T, but technically, if you're doing hypertrophy training, your rep range is between 8 and 12 reps. And so what this means is if you're going to do some bicep curls, you should be lifting weight heavy enough to where you can only lift that weight 8 to 12 times. Now, beginners, if you're going from a beginner into the weight room, I would lift with muscular endurance style, just to produce some good lifting habits, some good practices. And this is 15 or more reps. And this is really good for beginners getting into the weight room. But if you want to get really serious, after you get through these stages, then you can start working on this hypertrophy stage. And again, what you're doing is you're increasing the weight, but you're still able to do a lot of reps. And what we're doing here is muscle damage. So you're lifting a lot of weight that's fairly heavy, and then you're repeating this 3 times. You can do it, some people build up to 6 or more sets, but start with 2 or 3. That's a pretty good way to go. So what this workout would look like, let's say we're in the weight room, so you could do some front squats, which are my favorite. Very, very difficult, but front squats, and let's say you do 10 reps, you do 3 sets of those. You can do bench press. Let's say, again, 10 reps and 3 sets. So just to backtrack a little bit, when I'm talking about this, if you can only do 10 push-ups, then you don't really need bench press, right? Then you just stick with those push-ups, do your 10 push-ups, and you're already naturally in your hypertrophy range there. So that's a good thing. If you're at home and you're stuck, and you can still hit this range perfectly. And again, you're still going to build muscle mass if you're doing this type of workout, but this is going to be where you're really maximizing your muscle mass gains. So we got bench press there. We could do, we're in the weight room, so we could do lat pull downs for that upper back. One of the things you want to do is you want to be balanced. So if you're doing bench press, you want to do some back so that you're not, overcompensating, getting your pecs really strong and then having weak back muscles. You want to stay nice and evened out. Okay, let's look at this. So what I like to do is when you're doing abs and in this hypertrophy range, sometimes it can be tough to find a way to lift heavy enough to where you're only able to do 8 to 10 reps. So one of the things you could do is you can put a chest on your plate and you could do sit-ups that way to add some weight. They have ab machines as well, which I'm a big fan of. Or one of the ways that I do these is I call them pole vault abs. So I hang on to a pull-up bar and then I curl my knees up to my chest and then I kick my feet up towards the ceiling. And I can really only do 10 really good ones, and so I do 10 by 3 on those. You get the idea. And then you'd follow that with, if you're in a weight room, I like back extension. That's a pretty good one to even out the work you've done with your abs. Again, 10 by 3 you can do, and you can change these up a little bit if you want. I'm not going to finish the rest of this workout. You get the idea. You can just go through and add additional body muscle groups to that because you've created those cheat sheets. But some little hints and some tips to maximize your muscle gains during these. And right away you don't need to do these things, but as you get more developed, you need more stimulus in order to continue your gains. So let's say you've been doing this for a month and you're starting to not notice any improvements. Well, now what you can do is you can do what we call no, I'm not talking about that yet. You can decrease rest. So let's say you're doing front squats. If you decrease your rest between those front squats to 20 to 30 seconds, which is going to be really brutal, so make sure you've adjusted the weight appropriately. What this looks like is you would do front squats, 10 reps, you set it down, take 20 to 30 seconds rest, go and do front squats again. Then you take a short rest, 20 to 30 seconds, go do front squats again. What you're probably going to have to do is you're probably going to have to decrease this weight that you're lifting. So you might be actually having to lower the weight, but what you're doing when you're decreasing rest right here is you're actually not allowing the muscle fiber to recover, and then you're going to do more damage to it, and all that damage is going to signal a recovery response, which is then going to grow your muscle. So this is kind of your next step, is to decrease that rest. You can even do that with your beginner workouts here, although be prepared. You will feel extra soreness because you're doing this. You might start cramping. That's going to be muscle fatigue, but that's really what you're trying to do, is you're really trying to fatigue your muscle when you're doing that. Let's say you want to get a little more complex. What you can add are compound sets. And so these are days when you maybe do something back to back. So let's say you want to do some bench press and some chest flies. So this is where you're really targeting your pecs here. You can do this with legs, you can do this whatever. And let's say you're doing 3 by 10 and 3 by 15. So what you would do with this compound set is you're going to do bench one time, take a 30-second rest, go to chest flies, 30-second rest, back to bench, 30-second rest, back to chest flies, 30-second rest, back to bench. You get the idea. So this is going to really do a lot of damage to your upper body, right? To your chest, shoulders, arms, which then will elicit that growth response that people are often looking for when they're looking to get toned. With that said, don't be afraid of doing this. I've experienced in my class, sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want to get too much muscle mass. Trust me, it's very difficult to put on muscle mass, so you're not going to accidentally get huge. And cardio tends to decrease muscle size if you're doing a lot of cardio. So if you do somehow get too huge, you can just go do a little cardio and that'll actually shrink your muscle size up a little bit. So, don't avoid this because you don't want to get, too swole, because it's probably not going to happen. And this is how you get that good tone look, is by doing the weightlifting and then having a healthy body fat to actually show off those muscles that you've been working so hard for. So, do we have any more questions in the chat? I'm going to see if I have anything else to go over here and then answer those. I thought I had one more sheet. All right, we look like we're pretty good, so I'm going to answer your last questions and we'll finish up here. So, just to clarify, if you want to tone muscle, would you suggest a beginner workout more often versus a hypertrophy, or would you suggest intermixing them? Oh, yeah, let's look at that real quick. That's a good way to end. So if we're looking at this kind of training schedule here, and let's say we're going to add some more lifting rather than cardio, because this is pretty cardio heavy. You can do it however you want, right? So what I would do, maybe you do a hypertrophy day here where you lift pretty hard on Tuesday, and then you maybe just do a body weight workout here, just a little bit easier. Maybe even some kind of circuit where you kind of cross between some resistance training and some cardio. So you're trying to get that heart rate higher there. And then maybe you take a day off, right? And then you hit that hypertrophy day again. So you don't need to do hypertrophy every day. And in fact, I don't recommend it because you do need some recovery. So you could do hypertrophy with even a HIIT workout here, and then back to a circuit training workout. And then you just do a hike on Sunday, and then off. So you can mix and match however you want. For the most part, if you never did these hypertrophy trainings and you just did body weight every day, you can really get really good muscle mass. You just have to do more reps because you're not lifting as much weight. But there are ways to add weight. You can lift a backpack. You can raise your feet up. Just get creative while we're on lockdown. So, all right, I think that's pretty good for this video. If you have any additional questions, you can ask me on Blackboard, but I'm going to log out. Thanks for coming, and I will see you when you show up to the next one.